Hi, and welcome. Welcome back to those who were here before with us, and welcome to the newcomers. It's good to see everybody so enthusiastic about this old problem we have of aging. That maybe getting together, we can get through it, or stumble through it a little more intelligibly than if we just go through and live day by day and have no idea what's happening to us. Consciousness is everything. I have Mary back with me today, and she is going to start us off with a poem. Would you do that, Mary?
Surely. So this poem is titled Just Think, and it was written by Roy Lesson. Um, After we read this poem, we're just going to pause for a minute or two to reflect on its message. Just think. You're here not by chance, but by God's choosing. His hand formed you and made you the person you are. He compares you to no one else. You are one of a kind. You lack nothing that His grace can't give you. He has allowed you to be here at this time in history to fulfill His special purpose for this generation.
Amen. I hope that hit the spot. You're each very special. And we need to be reminded of that every day, don't we? It's so easy to forget, and the world doesn't always give us the encouragement to love ourselves, and we surely need to do that. I want to start out today with a quote from Richard Rohr. Lots of you, I'm sure, follow his readings every day. He's really on top of the spiritual world here. And he speaks, excuse me, he speaks here about contemplation. When we see contemplatively, we know that we live in a fully sacramental universe where everything is a pointer and an epiphany. When we see contemplatively, we know that we live in a fully sacramental universe where everything is a pointer and an epiphany. When we mention contemplation, and I've run into lots of people who have no idea what contemplation is. They think contemplation is sitting on a cushion, staring at your navel, and not speaking for hours on end. And that's not contemplation. Unfortunately, that definition keeps a lot of people from being the contemplative being that we are each called to be. So my take on it is that being a contemplative person is built into our character. You know, we are contemplative beings. It follows us all through life. And sometimes we develop it and sometimes we don't. Each of you received a handout from Lars Tanström, a Swedish sociologist who came up with the idea of gerotranscendence. I don't know if you got a chance to read that or not, but if you didn't, you can read it following this and it will add to what I'm saying. I got very excited when I heard about gerotranscendence because I always believed that there was a way to grow older that was different from the intimidation and fearful way that most people approach. It didn't seem to me that our loving God would just leave us flat when we got to old age. And Lars Tandstrom, in interviewing a lot of people, discovered that that's not true at all, that there is a tendency in older people who live alive and well and alert through their lives, reach this place of transcendence and possibility in that third cycle of life we'll talk about. So what I'd start with now is looking at the 3 cycles of life that we each go through. Our first cycle from birth to about 40, where finding our gifts and when we're younger and struggling to learn how to make relationships and how to love and do all those wonderful things. And then we progress through life and find our spouse and get with whatever our talents are and kind of map our world out, lay the foundation. And then we reach the second stage of life, which is called being. The word that is used to describe that is being. And we get to the middle stage of life and we're wondering, well, what's it all about? Why am I living purposeful? Especially, we get our children raised and we reach the middle years and we have all this talent. And for women, it's a time of great flowering when we come in touch with a lot of things that we didn't know we had or that we did know we had, and we had to wait to develop until we got to a place where we could do that. And the third cycle of life then is, I'd say, starting around 80, maybe before 80. It depends on the person. There's not an age limit to it. But that place in life now is where we reach that place where we're beginning to prepare for our leaving this world, because we have to face our death. And we need to face that in truth and honesty and not be fearful of it. And at this point, when Lars Tandstrom talks about the idea of a universal kind of experience, a cosmos experience, why that's, and some of you might have had that already, that feeling of oneness that we can get if we're looking at a sunset or a beautiful sky, or if we're looking at a baby, or we're looking at something else in life that, as Richard says, is a pointer, is an epiphany for us. We just see it like we've never seen it before. And those kinds of possibilities are available all through life that can help us to face the struggles we do every day and become a lot stronger for it. So looking back to that first stage of life and how we might look at contemplation, my children taught me how to be a contemplative. And a couple of them are on screen right now, so they'll recognize these stories. When they were little, we took a trip out to Wisconsin to see the farmland out there, which is very beautiful. And we stopped to see a cow, and they were pretty small, and they had never seen a cow before. So we're standing there by the fence and we're looking at this cow. And I look down at the 3 of them, and they're just in awe of this cow. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was seeing a cow. Now, I had seen many cows before, but that's when it really hit home to me how special this was, seeing it through a child's eyes. That's a moment of contemplation that each of us gets, and that we can encourage, because if we like those moments, we can invite them, and by inviting them, they become more plentiful in our lives. And through that, then we can become very in-depth in looking at life. I'm caught here by the definition of contemplation that comes from Spiritual Directors International. And they've come up with a long, loving look at the real. And that just seems to say it for me. It brings up a feeling of connection and of just feeling of appreciation. And certainly my three girls were looking at a cow with a long, loving look of the real. They were really transfixed. Moving on from there, I was teaching, religious education at one point in my life. And we went to a conference and they were showing us materials to teach the children. And one of the salespersons was saying, this book will show you how to teach a child to look at a butterfly. And I turned to my friend that was with me and I said, I think maybe a child would do better teaching me how to look at a butterfly. But that's how we can get our signals crossed. We don't seem to go what's natural to ourselves in contemplating. We just get too busy, busy, busy. And I remember in that second stage of my life, getting to a point where I was so busy that I couldn't remember what I did yesterday. And I stopped to think about it and said, what was it if I'm going to do all these things, if I don't realize and take effect on what I'm doing, think about it a little bit. And so I began to do that. And a friend of mine, a couple, they would take trips and they would actually allow one day ahead of the trip to relax and empty out, just get rid of all the tensions and all the things that crowd our monkey minds and just let it all go. And then they would leave for their trip the next day. They wouldn't do that at home though. They'd do that at another spot. I always thought that was very, very creative. I know I talked to a man one time who went to the beach and he would sit in the beach all day and not talk to anybody. And that was his way of emptying out all the business and all the things he was doing and just get in a frame of mind of relaxation and absorbing. This is what Tordstrom is referring to when he says that there's this possibility of transcendence in the older cycle. Let me just read you his definition of gerotranscendence. Gerotranscendence is the final stage in a natural process moving toward maturity and wisdom. The gerotranscendent individual experiences a new feeling of cosmic communion with the spirit of the universe, a redefinition of time, space, life, and death, and a redefinition of the self. And again, that's not relying on reaching old age. Those kind of moments can be had through our lived experience, and we really need to pay attention to that.
So Pat, are you saying that our challenge really is to almost go back and forth between our humanity and our spirituality?
Yes, we do that in this process of bringing about this different way of seeing and being in the world. When we're caught with a big decision in our life, for instance, I have an example. I've been working with a tool over the last several years, a pattern of a way of our integrating life experiences, because this really is what we're talking about. Doing more than just living moment to moment, but taking in the moments, making them count, and giving them some time to register and understand what's going on in us, what's going on in our head, our bodies, our feeling, so that we use all of our faculties to enjoy life and not just look at it from a head trip and walk on by. So in the process of doing that, a friend of mine found out, unfortunately, that her husband was seeing another woman. She was shocked beyond belief. She was devastated. She called me not right after it happened. It was quite a while after it happened that she called and shared with me. And she was very upset with herself. She said, I just can't seem to get a handle on this. She said, I'm okay for a while. And then all of a sudden I'm just tearful and I cry and cry and I can't stop crying. And she said, then I'll straighten up and I'll feel good again and feel like I've got a handle on it. And then sure enough, I'm back to crying, crying, crying. Well, this was exactly what this pattern of our integration process was showing me, and which I was able to play back to her and say, you know, you're not vacillating and you needn't get impatient with yourself for not being able to handle this. You've received a shock. And what happens is we take one bite of it at a time to understand it and integrate it in us. And in that process, we go from our kind of weak humanity trying to understand this, and we move over to our higher side or our divine side or our God side. And we get some stability there because there's something bigger than we are that's in charge of all this we know. And that gives us some courage to go through it. So then with that, we'll go back to the other side again and take another bite of this. I can't believe he did this to me. I can't believe this is happening. And then she switches back again. I can handle this. I know I'm loved. I have the strength to do this. God is with me. I know I can get through this with my faith. And then she falls apart again. So this is the normal process of how we integrate things. Knowing that can save us a lot of grief and self-bashing. We can say to ourselves, I'm a weak person, I can't get this, yada, 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 you know, self-bashing, what's wrong with me, what's wrong with me? And it's not what's wrong with us, it's what's right with us. We're doing exactly what the pattern of human behavior tells us we need to do and we need to go through to integrate something really difficult in our life. So when we're in that place of movement back and forth that's disturbing us, rather than bashing ourselves, we can say, no, I'm in the process of integration. It's something I have to go through. I just have to bite the bullet and get through it. So it's encouraging then to know that we need these times of contemplation to catch up with ourselves, to understand who we are and what we're about. And in our case too, to call on that higher power, that whatever you call it, God, Jesus, the universe, but to know that that source of love, and that's what it's all about, the source of love is there for us. And if we're open to it, we go through the hard times and we find that that love is there to buoy us up, to come through in all kinds of ways we don't understand. Doesn't take the pain away, doesn't take the conflict away, doesn't take the struggle away, but it surely does make it much more uh, and purposeful to know that people love us, to know that I can get through this, and to know that I can grow as I am getting through this. So those are some of the values of taking the time to stop and reflect on our lives, reflect on what we're doing. Who am I? Where am I? Where was I? Where am I now? And where am I going in the future?
So Pat, how does developing our contemplative view of life or How does that directly impact or deepen our spirituality?
Well, that's a great question, Mary. Um, it puts us more in touch with ourselves, for one thing, and it connects us with the fact that we are pieces of God. We are, as Christians say, called to be that other Jesus, whole, complete human beings. That to me is what Jesus reflects to us. The call to be totally human, fully alive within our own lives. And that takes courage, that takes guts, that takes faith. And so the more we get in touch with ourselves and can understand ourselves and be more dependent on the strength, the power that each of us has inside in our ability to love, in our ability to connect with other people, in our ability to just be, the greater is our sense of connection and bring about this whole sense of oneness. Can you imagine what the world would be like if everyone was in this place of being fully human, fully alive, and content with what they had, that we could look around and respect and live with each other and tolerate each other and not want to grab and be materialistic and want everything is for ourselves. I don't know if does that answer your question or did I leave you wanting?
No, it did. I think the bottom line here is what you said: guts, courage, and strength.
Yes, and I think another thing I would point out for Christians is, Jesus promises an abundant life. This is what the abundance life looks like. It's not abundance in having things, and sometimes the people with the most abundance are the people who have the least. But it's that joy of knowing, being comfortable in your own skin, of knowing you're connected to a world, knowing that you matter, that you're important, that you contribute, and that your life is worthwhile. And this again is something that comes at that third stage of life when we look back and we begin to put our life together. And so if you're at an earlier stage, now it's a good time to start doing that and be proactive instead of reactive. Because many people hit nursing homes and they are just totally unhappy with the life that they led, and they just spend their time in bitterness and frustration because life hasn't been what they expected it to be. I discovered rather late in life, this isn't anything that anybody really wants to know, but I'm going to say it anyway because you probably know it deep down. We all think we were made to be happy and, really have fun, and we weren't. Humanity is made to suffer, and in that suffering we grow. People don't grow when they're happy and having fun, and that's the fruits of the courage and stamina it takes us to get through life. And so we have programs like this so we can know that you're not alone. I know we had one program, and if Marianne isn't with us, I guess yeah, she's down there. I don't know if she's listening, but we had one and Miriam brought her daughter who was just graduated from college, and she heard people sharing like this, and she got in the car with her mother and she said, Mom, she said, I can't believe that all those things are true and that people really have. She said, I thought it was only me that was unhappy with herself or was unhappy with the way she was going. And it was great for her to hear that and be aware of it at such a young age. It takes most of us a lifetime. We're called to be active contemplatives, is what Richard Rohr calls us, but to go through our life in this slowed down stance of taking the time to reflect. And as Mary just pointed out with her questions of how that can affect the life that we lead. And probably some of you are doing that already, and we're going to put you in groups so you can get in touch with some of your own life experiences in any one of these cycles in growing up to that 40, to that midlife section of being. That might be where you are now, and how are you struggling with that, or how you are accomplishing that achievement there in your midlife. And some of you might be in the last cycle of life too, and struggling with meeting that challenge and needing to meet it with love. You know, meet it with love. Love is always the answer, and it's the thread that runs through it all, and it's the strength we need to get through. So, Mary, I'll let you.
Okay. So Mary Ann is going to put us into small groups for 20 minutes. And for the small group sharing, we invite you to share anything at all that bubbles up for you regarding contemplation. Perhaps experiences you might remember that caught you, something you saw, heard, felt. Anything that caused you to pause for that long, loving look at the real. So any noticings or wonderings that arose as a result of past presentation or not, questions you may have, just be at ease, follow the spirit. There's no right or wrong here.
Was told that the people that registered late did not get a copy of the Gero Transcendence article that was to be sent out with the registration. So I was just wondering, I've been using that word, Gero Transcendence. Anyone wonder what it means, or want to guess what it means? You know, with the Gero, that's what Mary asked me. Hey, what is are we going to tell them what Gero means? And Gero connects with gerontology, the study of older people. And when I got interested in aging, as I said last time, I was working in a nursing home. And at that point in time, there wasn't even a word for Gero or for growing older. Gerontology is something, a new field of medicine that's just grown and grown and grown. And I think it's going to even grow larger because our population is shifting. And that eventually, as the baby boomers all move into their 60s and over, or they're going to be the majority to outweigh the younger population. And to me, people were talking about all the problems that brought up to me. I thought, it's a great opportunity because we'll have all these wisdom people around that can maybe show us some light and some reason from what the world is experiencing now. So the Gero means gerontology, it's short for that. And transcendence, of course, is going beyond the normal. And that's a word that's bandied about so much today in the world that I hope it doesn't lose its significance and overuse. But to transcend something, and that's what we're trying to do, to transcend the human limits that we have as we go older, and doing that by discovering new talents, new goals, new insights, and really making the invisible visible. So that is Gero Transcendence. Get a copy of the article when we finish. It was the hardest thing I ever had to do in my entire life. Very, very hardest thing. Filling up now, and I haven't cried, but it's because my three girls are here, and I couldn't have done it without them. I just could not have done it without the love and the support that they gave us. And it wasn't always pleasant for them because, you know, I wasn't very good at pretending I was real happy about everything and many times they just had to take things in their own hand and make decisions that I wasn't ready to make. So I tribute my family, and lots of you have heard this before. I've told this story. I've never, ever known such love as I did in this whole last year of pandemic. And then culminating with the move from home to here. When I got here, I kind of crashed and I went into a really dark night. Into that nothingness. It's funny, I was talking to a woman, a friend the other day, and I said something to her about, oh, you know, if I had to give up my ministry, I'd probably get bored. And she doesn't have a ministry, and she's been retired quite a long time. And she said, oh no, she said, you just sink into that nothingness. And I said, oh wow, you know, that's really something. But I knew that's what I had done when I got here. I just sank into that nothingness, and it was a very um, ground level feeling of just recognizing my vulnerability, my flaws, my nothingness, and being human, and the end that we all come to. It wasn't a happy time. But it was necessary, and it was really good in the long run because um, I had a marriage of Pauline's daughter that yanked me out of it. Really, I attended her, or I officiated her wedding, so I had to pull myself out of it to go up there. And I don't think I acted too depressed, did I, Colleen? I had a good time.
Not one bit. You rocked it.
They were, that was the beginning of it. I came back and I still was a little bit, and then actually All Souls Day and All Saints Day that weekend was where I just really came back again, and with renewed strength and belief in myself again, and that life could go on. And I'm the stronger for it now. And I have to tell you, now that I'm here, I love this place. I am so grateful. My husband and I both are just as happy as we could be. In fact, I said to my daughter, who we live with now, I said to her the other night, I said, you know, I'm getting kind of guilty listening to people. I said, when I tell them how happy I am. And that's pretty great thing when you can be that happy. I never expected to be, but I am. And I can only attribute it to all the love in my life and all the people in my life that are just so sweet and dear. And most of all to my creator, who loves us all above everything. So it's very frightening, and you get through it. I was frightened before it ever happened, years before it happened, thinking, what am I going to do with all this stuff? Well, all the stuff was taken care of by my dear daughter, Patty, who came into the house 2 weeks on end and just distributed everything and packed everything up. And I didn't do a thing, really. I did not do a thing. And I was very fortunate. I have friends now that are envious of all the help I got. But yeah, it's not easy facing that end of life. And I think the connectedness, the love, that universal feeling that you're all talking about is what can buoy us up, because it's always going to be hard to leave this world, and leave it we must. So we might as well do it with grace and wisdom. And that's the whole intent for these programs, that we can face our fears, know it's a struggle, and we just have to come to a way of acceptance. And we can, because love is always there to do it. And I, in the midst of my grief too, I really forgot about my family, who were letting go of their gathering place and letting go. So it was extremely difficult for them, and they're the ones that had to deal with all of it. So we got through it without an argument, without any kind of disagreement. It was an exercise. The whole year was like that. And the what I was left with afterwards is how I think it was grace from God, really, that gave us the love and the understanding that all of us had in getting through that. And it showed me how even the most difficult things can be tolerable and growthful when they're done with love. And we had a lot of fun besides too. So cultivate the lovely relationships in your life. I think at this point, Mary has a lovely story that she wants to share with you. She shared it with me, and I said, "Oh, Mary, that's such a beautiful story of how life can come together for us." So I'll let Mary share with you her Easter story, and then we'll gather the graces, the one word expression of what you might take home with you today after this, and then we'll close out.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you, Pat's family. This is a particular experience of mine, unique to my life, but I'm sure you all have similar stories you can share. Like so many families, we had not seen our son, daughter-in-law, and 3 grown grandchildren in well over a year because of the pandemic. And then suddenly, as things started to loosen up and open up, we found ourselves scheduled to go visit them in Northern Virginia, not too far from Pat actually, for Easter. Now, over the years, in spite of the distance between us, we were always fortunate to spend a lot of time with our grandchildren while they were growing up. And that occurred primarily through visits for holiday and babysitting. Not to mention that for a good number of years, we had them come here for a summer vacation for a week. So along with the enjoyment of always being with them, became the work of caring for children. So with each visit, there was help needed, either in the kitchen or other chores over the holidays, of carrying off a holiday that spanned a long weekend. Because of our distance, we always spent several days together over a holiday. So each time I would go into active helper mode, looking for any way to be helpful. Easter 2021, however, was very different. Our grandchildren now are 24, 21, and 19. How did they grow up so fast? We remain the same, especially in our head. I think Colleen said, you know, our age is a number, but in our minds, we're a lot younger. We seem the same, but perhaps we just have a little less energy. But this was a really different experience. Nobody needed being taken care of. I didn't even try to help in any way because I knew I didn't need to. Somehow that message was communicated to me from my son and daughter-in-law wordlessly. It was just a sense I got. Then late Saturday night, my grandson received a phone call, was probably a text, more than a phone call, from a fellow student at college, an exchange student from Italy, saying he was coming to DC with 4 other exchange students to visit for a few days. They wanted to see our nation's capital. Well, suddenly they were all coming to my son's house for dinner on Sunday. My son and daughter-in-law were up early the next morning, food shopping and preparing a whole new meal for a total of 15 people. Meanwhile, my grandsons picked up the other students from Italy, Spain, and Korea at the metro. After the first 5 minutes of awkwardness, everyone was relaxed and engaged in conversation. Following a delightful afternoon, they needed to get to their VBRO, which is like an Airbnb, if you're familiar with that term, that they had rented in the city, but they were unsure of its location. So my daughter-in-law's sister used to live in DC, and she is very familiar with the city like the back of her hand. So she insisted that she drive these students downtown so that they would not get lost and not have to use the metro. As it turned out, they had been scammed and the rental address did not exist. So my daughter-in-law's sister got them safely settled in a hotel. So these are the facts of the weekend. But as I reflected on it, I became aware of what a contemplative time it was, a gift of not doing. We were just there, visiting, getting caught up, enjoying each other, sharing meals, being together, enjoying nature, just being present. And then I knew that I was just bathing in the energy of love. The whole weekend was about love, and I was a contemplative witness swimming in the river. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. So we're going to close with one of my favorite sayings by Padre Arupi, who was head of the Jesuit order and died quite a few years ago. Many of you are familiar with this prayer, I'm sure, because it's widely known, but it's wonderful to be reminded of. So if you'll put it up on the screen. Nothing is more practical than finding God, that is, than falling in love in a quite absolute final way. What you are in love with, what seizes your imagination, will affect everything. It will decide what you get out of, when you get out of bed in the morning, what you do with your evenings, how you spend your weekends, what you read, who you know, what fears your, what breaks your heart, what amazes you with joy and gratitude. Fall in love, stay in love, and it will decide everything.
Amen.
Amen. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you.
for being with us.